Hey there, so today I thought I would share with you the newest project in my project bag, and it involves these Crochet Granny Squares. Hey there, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Sweet Georgia channel. I am Felicia from Sweet Georgia, and we are going to talk today a little bit about these Crochet Granny Squares that I have been making at every possible moment. I can't even remember where I first saw the Jethro cardigan design, but it is designed by Tanis from Tanis Fiber Arts, and it's a cardigan that combines both knitting and crochet. Basically, you crochet a whole bunch of classic granny squares and then you join them together. Then you would pick up for the sleeves and trim. So obviously this is a really easy and fun way to play with color, especially making your own color palettes and color combinations. Now at first, because I happen to have a lot of sock yarn, I first tried to hold sock yarn doubled to make sort of an approximate DK weight. And so these are some little sample granny squares that I made using 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held together. They ended up being a little bit on the heavier side, a little bit more dense than I wanted. And also I found that managing 2 ends is not as much fun as just knitting and crocheting with DK weight. Crocheting with DK weight yarn is really the sweet spot. It feels really good. It makes a nice looking square. It's easy to crochet with. It's great. But the goal and the point of playing with these granny squares is to play with color. And so I wasn't necessarily going to buy 6 or 10 full skeins of DK weight yarn in order to get 6 to 10 different colors that I wanted for this sort of color palette. And so I feel like the answer here is DK weight mini skeins. And so we have in the past made party of 5 sets using Superwash DK weight yarn, and I used a couple of these sets. So I used a Pine Island set and also the Blazing Trails set. And so that's 2 sets of the party of 5 in DK weight. Now, in order to make all of the granny squares that you need to make the Jethro cardigan, you actually need the yardage that is in 3 of these DK weight sets. And so I am just sort of using 2 so far, and then I'm going to add a 3rd set and sort of like figure out where I want to shift these colors. Maybe I want to shift the colors more to the Pine Island side, and I would add that as a 3rd set. Or maybe I want to shift it more to the Blazing Trails side and then have a little bit more of a muted palette and then add that as a 3rd set. Or add a 3rd set of colors altogether. Like I'm thinking maybe something that has some pink in it and adding that kind of to the mix. In order to offer some more color options for Superwash DK, we decided to add some new color options to those party of 5 sets. And so this gives you a couple more color options to play with if you're wanting to make a Jethro cardigan yourself, or if you want to make a whole bunch of sets of granny squares and make a blanket or make whatever you want to make with these very versatile little blocks of color. So basically all I did was I wound all of the mini skeins into little balls. They're all about sort of this size, very manageable. Okay, and then I put them all into my project bag, and then I would basically just pull out colors for each round as I go. In some cases, I planned ahead a little bit, and then I would sort of arrange the colors in an order that I wanted for a granny square, and then kind of like work from that point. And in other cases, I would just sort of go with the flow. So whatever happened to stand out at that time. So if I started with this, then I might be like, oh, the next color should be this Amber Ale, and then maybe the next color after that should be this Winter Haven, and kind of go from there. I think that the key here is having more of a limited color palette, and that makes it more cohesive. If there's too many colors, it starts to just look messy. But if it's kept to sort of a limited set, then there's a theme. And so I think that the colors that I chose are kind of in this deep autumn kind of color palette. So like deep rust colors, brown, teal, a bunch of different kinds of gold. That's kind of the theme that I've got going on here. And so far, I think I've made almost a dozen granny squares. I need to make about 36 in total. And so I think about if I could just make 2 squares a day, I could get it done pretty quick. All of these granny squares I made while I was in London, and I didn't have any scissors because I couldn't travel with scissors because we didn't have any check-in luggage. We just went with carry-on luggage. I didn't carry any scissors, and so I would just break the yarn for every round. And eventually I'm going to need to weave in all of these ends. But this was a nice project to be able to carry around because you can pick it up and just, you know, figure out where you are at whatever point you're at, and you can just keep going. So it's a very easy project to put down and then pick up again. And you don't have to remember what you're doing. You memorize how to make a granny square and then just go. You can see I still have actually a ton of granny squares that I made ages ago that I still haven't joined. These ones were all ones that Nina found in my attic, and then she ran away with them because she thought they were all so cute. But these ones were a slightly different granny square. This is not a classic granny square design. This one was called, I think, Summer Garden Squares. And I had made these originally for a big blanket. But in fact, if I don't actually need it for a blanket, I have definitely enough to maybe join them all together and make like a mini cardigan. Maybe Nina can have this as a mini cardigan with all of these super, super cute granny squares. I feel like this needs to have something done with it. I need to do something with these squares. They have been here way too long. Now for my granny squares, I decided to use the 4mm hook. This is the G hook. Even though the pattern suggests 3.75mm, I did crochet squares using both sizes of hooks, and I just found that the 4mm one I like better. Maybe it's my gauge, maybe it is, whatever it is. It feels a little bit not so thick and not so dense, so I like these. Now, the thing that I'm thinking about right now is how do I block these granny squares? If I'm making 36 of them, or I have, you know, however many of these older granny squares like these ones, what is the best way to block these all at the same time without using like a million pins? And I have seen these little rigs that you can buy to stack all of the squares and then block them to the exact same dimensions. But I'm also thinking that I don't really want to acquire an additional piece of equipment for all of this. So I am open to ideas or thoughts about how you go about blocking granny squares. If you also want to learn to crochet granny squares, please see my video where I go through step by step on how to crochet a classic granny square. And if you want to learn how to crochet even more in depth, you can join our wonderful crochet friend and instructor Charlotte Lee in her Learn to Crochet series of courses on our School of Sweet Georgia. That is basically it for today. Thank you so much for being here and watching all about my granny squares. I hope to have this project finished soon so I have something to wear this fall. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now. Crochet granny squares are so simple and so addictive to make. They're like potato chips of making things.